See, 1, 2, 3. Maybe give it another minute or two. All right, well, why don't we get started? Hey, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy rainy Tuesday for me. We have a pretty robust agenda here, and I think it will be helpful to let me walk through some of our updates. And it does say introductions. We don't need to do introductions tonight. And I think that will kind of ground us on the next agenda item. So the first thing that I wanted to share, and I thought I saw Stephanie on the line. The legislature is done finally, which is wonderful. I knew I'd get a good reaction out of you on that. The healthcare committees were very, very busy. I'll give you a very high level update on some of the bills that we're working through, and I can, Stephanie, I might, oops, there's a little bit of background, folks, whoever just joined. Can you mute them, Abby? Great. So the big one, I think where we'll start, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, I'll just give you a high level overview, is S126. And in that bill, the Green Mountain Care Board was asked to set some methodologies for reference-based pricing. We are gathering our internal team and starting that work. I think Dave can share a little bit of work. He's the board member who's been leading on that work, so he may be able to share more on what he's hearing on other states. But the other thing I want to pull out of S126 is that there was created a primary care steering committee. And right before I got on this meeting, I got a note from John Saroyan, Dr. Saroyan, who's the head of the Blueprint for Health. And he is going to look for I think the language, and Stephanie, you can keep me straight on this. I think the language says a member of the PCAG committee, right? The Green Mountain Care Board PCAG. Do you remember?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So we should put that on our to-do. And then we had several other bills, which ranged from a technical bill where we cleaned up some of our duties and some of the ACO work we're doing that is changing. The H482 was essentially emergency authority if, God forbid, one of our insurers went solvent. if there were some mechanisms to address that situation if it did indeed happen. And then there was a big bill, the H266, which capped the ASP, which is the average sales price of prescription drugs, outpatient prescription drugs for some of Vermont's hospitals to 100 to 120%. Actually, of ASP, if I'm
Oh.
getting that correctly. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah,
100%.
outpatient administered drugs.
Thank you. And not
So-
for all hospitals. Critical access hospitals that are not part of a network are not included. So that's also a big bill. Stephanie, while I have you up, can I call on you if there's anything that just for the primary care focus, just to update this group, since you live up there, among other things?
Thankfully wasn't there yesterday. Yeah, I mean, I think getting the primary care steering committee was the big thing for this group in particular. There's a few public health things, but I think for the practice of primary care, 126 was probably the biggest for this year. And then of course the budgetary things, getting the part of the gap funding for OneCare, CPR payments, basically sustainability funding for the blueprint, basically to keep the doors open. And then the family medicine residency program, if they do find it to be matchable, which all the advocates think it is, that will be funded as well.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Stephanie. So the Dave, well, let me talk about the upcoming regulatory work, and then I might a couple of other things, and I just might turn it to Dave to see if he has anything else to add on what he's hearing from other states. We are just starting our really busy calendar with the Green Mountain Care Board with our regulatory work over the summer. As we talked about last time, we have before us the Qualified Health Plan rate requests from Blue Cross Blue Shield and MVP. I believe we shared those links with you. If not, we can do that, but it is on our website. So that's going on. And then on July 1st, we will receive the budget submissions for the 14 hospitals. And we start that process, which takes us through mid-September, early October. So I'm looking at Dave. He is going to have a very busy summer. He knows this, but it is a lot. And so we're trying to manage all of the pressures that we have inside and outside the board. But I would really encourage everyone to make sure you look on our website for our hearings for the hospital budgets, the hearings, the rate review hearings will be in mid-July. So look for those. Those are also going to be on our website. And then we will send this to you because there is an open public forum where we take public comment from anyone who wants to on the submitted rates. And that is also in July. And I don't have the exact date, but it's part of our process. So I will make sure you all have that as well. And then the last thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it over to Dave, is we are looking, we have some ideas on how to get legal to weigh in on our levers for primary care, and we'll address that later on in the agenda. I know that you all, we talked about this last time, and I just wanted to make sure that we haven't let you know that we haven't forgotten that. So we're working on that and have some proposed solutions later on. Dave, is there anything you want to share on the reference-based pricing or
Rob Penny's got his hand up. Before we go to reference-based pricing, I just want to add one comment on
Sure.
I think one of the most interesting hearings to maybe tune into, and I don't know the date of it yet, is that there's a hospital budget overview hearing at the beginning of the process. I think sometimes we've had outside speakers come in to help kind of frame the process. It's often, I would say, one of the more interesting hearings of that time frame. Some of the others can get pretty
Yeah.
weedy, but if you're interested in a specific hospital, it can be helpful. So I think that's one of the most interesting hearings. And then
That's great,
in
Dave.
the deliberation hearings can be interesting as well. But that overview hearing, I think, really provides a ton of context to what the board is doing, what we're weighing, and what the challenges are, and what the broader landscape looks like. But Rob, were you going to say something there?
Just had a question on the legislation. I thought I remembered seeing in one of those bills adding 3 members to the Green Mountain Care Board. I'm not sure if I remember
No.
that correctly or if it passed or.
Great. No, thank you for bringing that up.
It sounds like it could use some more
cover
help.
that. Yeah, no, so we, as part of the legislative session, the governor proposed 3 positions in his budget to us. This is to help the ongoing work that we have, the mostly around finance and hospital budgets and assessing access and quality. So yes, we received authority to pursue application of those 3 positions from what is called the position pool. It's basically an executive pool of positions that are existing in state government that has no one in them. So it's a pretty competitive process, but I'm hopeful that we will get those. We just submitted those applications. And then we received, as part of S126, 3 positions, 2 on reference-based pricing, and 1 position in a sorely needed part of our team, which is our business office, dealing with all of the state contracting and with procurement and some of the budgeting and operations. So yes, so there are 6 total. Rob, thank you for bringing that up.
So are those board members or
No,
additional staff?
Sorry, yeah,
Staff, okay.
staff. Yep, to help the board members make their decisions. Great question. Thank you. And we'll keep you updated whether we get those or not. It's not a certainty. Fingers crossed. Did you have another question, or is that legacy, Rob? I think that was legacy. You're on mute.
Thought I was taking that off.
Okay. Great question. Go ahead, Dave.
All right. So the other, just a quick update on reference-based pricing to some degree. So we've been optimistic that the legislation would pass. So we've started having meetings. Really, Elena Barabé is running this from the board staff side. And I guess I've sort of been default as the board member that's gotten involved with this, partially because it's an area of interest and of mine. So last week, Elena and I and Mike Barber went down to a Commonwealth Fund meeting in Boston, multi-state meeting, and it was quite interesting. Basically, it was states working on commercial affordability strategies, but basically the strategy that every state is using is reference-based pricing in one form or another. So there's representatives there from Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. There's a speaker from Connecticut. I can't remember if there's someone actually at the meeting from Connecticut. And so people are in different places. They're looking at different ways, but it's really helpful to have this multi-state view of it. One of the things that I think is really relevant to primary care is what the work that they're doing in Washington. So most of these states are looking at taking the state employee plan. Washington also has a public option that's on a reference-based pricing fee schedule, essentially. And what they're doing in Washington is they are setting caps for some things and setting floors for other things. And the areas that they're setting floors for are primary care services, what we call mental health services. They use the term behavioral health services in Washington, and other sort of necessary things that they feel are important to have a functional delivery system. So I think what's exciting to me about this is that there are examples of states working on this that are a little ahead of us that we can sort of pull off of the hard work that they've put in to start seeing if that's the right fit for Vermont. And so I just wanted to share that. Lee? Hold on, you're still on mute. Hold on.
I got
There
it.
you are.
I don't know why I had two hands up, but I was only trying to get one, but we'll go. Can you define reference-based pricing? Because
So-
I don't bill. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you
Okay,
guys are
so
about.
the concept of reference-based pricing is it's actually so it's taking a reference price, which pretty much everybody uses Medicaid for the most of the services, but Medicare for most of the services, but Medicare does not provide pediatric care or obstetric care to people who don't get Medicare for the disability reasons. So there's certain services where Medicare pricing doesn't make sense, but just for the sake of it, just say, typically speaking, you apply a Medicare pricing and then you multiply that by a percentage. So if it was exactly what Medicare pays, it would be 100% of Medicare. If it's twice Medicare pays, you call it 200% of Medicare. What this allows is a bunch of things. It allows standardization of pricing in a way that brings sort of rationality. While the Medicare pricing system isn't perfect, when you compare the Medicare pricing system to the commercial pricing system, it's much more rational. So we see in Vermont that we'll have hospitals that are in the lowest couple deciles, maybe the 10th, 20th percentile for inpatient medical pricing, and in the top couple percent for CT and MRI pricing. And so we have this massive price distortion. And so what reference-based pricing allows you to do is have a rational approach to pricing, and then you can think about ways to control these outliers with caps, and then you can think about ways to control the undervalued things within the Medicare system, or things that we think are underfunded within our current system that are necessary. And I think the big common one that would be described here is primary care. So where you can lift up that cap. So that is the basic gist. So in the way that it would be fully implemented would be at a code level. So each code would be referenced to a range that is, say, for instance, in Oregon, they have implemented at a kind of an aggregate pricing level. So hospital prices could be, they use 200% of Medicare as their cap. So 200% of Medicare is the price cap. They may have services that are 300% of Medicare and 100% of Medicare, but the cap is at 200. They're switching to that code level soon, where each service will be capped at 200%. But then what Washington is doing, which I think is really interesting, is they're taking that same model and then they're bringing in the floor component. So they're lifting up prices to things that they want to see subsidized. Primary care was discussed. Obstetric care at rural hospitals is discussed. And most of these states, by the way, have exclusions. So Oregon, for instance, excludes all the critical access hospitals and a few other rural hospitals and their pediatric specialty hospital. But that's kind of the general concept of reference-based pricing. It's effectively a tool for setting prices. And so our statute, we have the authority to do rate setting. So this is rate setting, and we're setting rates based upon some other way. The other example of rate setting is what Maryland does, and they have a team of, I can't remember, Susan, if you remember the numbers, like 30 people,
At least.
maybe
Yeah.
40,
40.
that sets
Yeah.
the prices for every service for every hospital, and they adjust them every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the reason why they do that, it's how their statute was written, so it's problematic. But what they do in their system is they have global budgets, so they set a budget, the amount of revenue a hospital can earn in a year. And if they're under budget, they raise their prices. And if it looks like they're going over budget, they lower the prices. So at the end of the year, the revenue that they were approved to get is the revenue they get. So they run like a fee-for-service backbone, but every 2 weeks they're adjusting prices to like just land at that exact right spot. Yeah, it's yeah. So this is this is a much less complicated way to do it. But you could do this within a global budget as well. So, all right. That hopefully gives enough. Yeah.
We
The
have
other thing
more
I just want to
questions,
mention,
Dave. Okay,
Lee,
keep going.
real quick
Yeah.
before we move on, is that the rate setting authority, and I don't know the answer to this question, but John King brought up on our last meeting is, could you use that rate setting authority to set capitated payments within the commercial rate setting authority? So could we set up a state run CPR program? And I don't know the answer to that, but that's something I think is a question that could be brought up with our legal group and see if that's something we have the authority to do now. Tim, were you?
I think it was Faye next, wasn't it?
Oh, Faye? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Faye.
Faye's next.
Okay, sorry. Just trying to get my head around this a little bit. A couple of questions. It sounded like you were saying that the reference could be different for rural hospitals than bigger hospitals. I guess I would have thought that it would be that this reference would be consistent across the board. So I might have misunderstood that. And are these rates or this this reference pricing, does it affect outpatient care as well as inpatient care? I guess it's always helpful with any legislation for me to know who hates it and who loves it. And it sounds like this has some benefits for primary care or potentially benefits for primary care, but I don't know. Those are my questions. That was too many questions. Sorry.
All right. So the first one would be, is the reference range the same for everybody? Or is sort of the percent of Medicare the same for every hospital? Would be kind of the answer to that is it wasn't specified in the legislation. If we look around the country, it's done differently in different places. Say, for instance, Oregon just excludes referencing a cap on critical access hospitals. And for out-of-network hospitals that aren't critical access, they actually pay less. So to sort of encourage hospitals to come to end-to network. Now, Oregon is a state employees plan that does it for, I can't remember, 8% of their total population. It's state employees, teachers, public service employees. So it's a pretty large group, but it's not what we're talking about in Vermont, which is fully rate set. So the legislature in that S126 put some caveats, and I can't remember right what they are, and probably Stephanie's the bill savant. She might have them off the top of her head, but it was something like taking into account basically, geographic, service mix, various and sundry factors. So there's kind of two schools of thought on this. One is everybody gets the same price. So, and then you have a bit more of a market dynamic that shakes out. The other school of thought is, okay, so certain hospitals have really favorable payer mixes with very high proportions of commercial patients, and other hospitals have pretty unfavorable payer mixes with very low portion of commercial patients. And is it fair that the high commercial, just based on geography, that the hospital in the rich area or the hospital in the high commercial population area ends up with more revenue than the hospital in the low commercial revenue areas? I kind of think when we implement this, and this is Dave Merman, one board member looking at this, is I think we would probably try to build in some adjustments to adjust for things like payer mix, geographic importance. It depends if it gets broadly implemented through all hospitals or critical access end up not being in it. But I would think that we would try to build in some layers of equity into the payment scheme. All right, there we go.
Dave, I have my cheat sheet because I'm deciphering all of the bills. So I just
Yep.
pulled that out. So that, I don't know
Okay.
if Stephanie has anything to add, but that might help.
But it does say, just to clarify, it does leave it up to the Green Mountain Care Board to set benchmarks about reference-based
Right.
pricing.
Right,
So you have a
Yep.
couple years, but there's flexibility within that.
Right.
Up to the Green Mountain Care Board.
Yeah. Discretion gets complicated, but I think the equity benefit of discretion here, I think, is really, unless we built a formula at the outset to adjust for things, I think it could be important to have. Okay, that was question one. Oh, I should have written them down. I didn't write down your other questions, Faye. I'm sorry.
I had sort of a question about who loves it and who hates it.
Oh, everybody loves
Does-
it. So
does
I think
Stephanie wanna take that one? That might be a better person. Seriously, like you're in the room, Stephanie. Who loves it, who hates it?
I don't think anybody hated the reference-based pricing, honestly. I don't think everybody loved it per se. Love is a very strong word, as is hates. But I think, the hospitals have the most to gain or lose from this. And I think they were, some of them were headed in this direction, perhaps anyway. They saw the writing on the wall. And so I don't think this piece was as perhaps inflammatory as other pieces of this bill.
I think the devil's
that sound fair?
For them, I would think the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
It all depends on what the goal is.
Well, and
Many
as
other
we all
states-
know, I was just going to say, as we all know, in primary care, especially Medicare, is not exactly the gold standard of payment
Right.
either. So,
Right.
there's a give and take to that, I would say.
Thanks, Dave.
It's interesting
That was a good overview.
in the room, listening to different states talk about thresholds, 150% of Medicare, 175% of Medicare, 200% of Medicare. Those would be challenging numbers from the data that I've seen. Now, it all depends on when you do the reanalysis. Like most of our data comes out of RAND, and RAND does have some adjustments in the data. So, what looks like 350% of Medicare may actually, when you shake it out and you use Medicare base pricing as opposed to the price of Medicare that the hospital was paid, that maybe it's 240% of Medicare. So I think a lot will be understood to the impact of the hospitals once we get some more state-specific data. And there was a third question, Faye, that was good about, what was it?
Let's see, inpatient and outpatient, does it affect everybody? I guess I was sort of asking indirectly whether it has actually stabilized primary care in these other states.
Okay, so in the states it's been implemented, it's been really hospital focused as a cap to try to manage increased hospital spending impact. So it's in the states it's been implemented on like state health plans, or on public option plans, and it's been implemented as a cap to try to control cost growth, commercial cost growth in those situations. So Washington will be the first state to kind of look at implementing the floor concept to try to increase reimbursements in areas that are targeted for being under reimbursed. How we do it in Vermont is totally not yet defined. I think the intent, I'd have to go reread the statute to be careful of that. My impression is the intent is probably to be hospital specific, but we do have rate setting authority outside of hospitals as well. So that we don't need further legislation, I think, to develop. So, but for the hospitals, it would be inpatient and outpatient. Tim, did you have a question still?
It's too off topic, and I was just curious how, Vermont is the size of Milwaukee. So like, how do these states do it? When, is anything that another state does applicable to us? Because we have such a small risk pool. When you carve it all up into all the different sizes and shapes, it's like, does anything apply, or we can't really generalize from these things? Sorry.
Yeah, I know it's the Oregon state employees is bigger than the commercial market in Vermont. And we don't think of Oregon as being like an, excessively populous state. So it's a good thought process, good thought exercise, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. I think Rob is a legacy hand. He tried to put it down before. And it didn't.
No, we put it back up.
Oh, do you have a question, Rob? Okay.
Oh, no, maybe not.
No, I'm not sure how to get the
There you
hand
go.
down.
Got it.
There you
Okay.
go.
I got it for you, Rob.
All right, any other questions on what we just covered? And we're just starting here. I mean, legislature just finished. We just requested positions. We don't know if we're going to get them. But we have some really smart folks on our team, and Dave, as I said, has been talking with other states, and so stay tuned. Let's see, the next item that we were going to go to is an open discussion. And this is around primary care priorities, which we talked about last time. Maybe discuss the charter revision, perhaps. But I think we had some ideas on how to handle this. And Dave, do you want to chime in here
Sure.
to start?
So last meeting, I think it was last meeting, we talked a bit about what are the authorities the board has to work to improve the primary care landscape in Vermont. And we were hoping to have the legal team come. We couldn't get anybody to come, but I was wondering if it would actually be helpful if we had if we could develop a work group. If we had, I guess in general, I was wondering, what would you all think about having a couple work groups where we can have a few people work on a topic, come back to the larger PCAG and present the findings. And the work group that I was thinking we could do here is have a few people work with myself, Abby and Susan, and our legal team to think through how to reconcile the priorities that you all generated and or other ideas with the statutory authorities that we have to do things, so that we can kind of start moving from discussion to action. The summer is really intimidatingly busy. I'm just going to say that. Like, I just looked at my schedule and it is packed. So I was thinking but I still think this would be I think we should start moving on this over the summer. But I would say my personal preference would be prioritize some work group time as opposed to a general PCAG meeting time, to try to get some stuff moving forward on looking at, what are the options we have to make the world better. And so I was just going to throw that idea, see what you all thought. And I guess then we'd have to figure out a way to make a work group. Eileen.
Thinking about also the charter in there, not to put the work group having everything, but I think what the work group you're talking about would then also feed to looking at the charter. Because we've already talked about the charter and what we think kind of needs to change, but I think that work group is going to kind of feed in there a little bit.
Agreed.
Yeah, we could do that. I think that's a good idea.
Lee?
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I'm still on. Okay. I don't see why we couldn't have multiple work groups, one working on the charter, one working on how to make primary care, better, where we set the floors, and whatever else we come up with. I think it would be kind of cool to have us working on like 3 different topics instead of giving it all to one work group. Have 3 separate topics that we're all working on, and that way everybody also gets a chance to be on a work group, hopefully, if they want to be. And then, after summer calms down in October, we should have our work done, and we come back and have a presentation meeting and go from there. That would be what I would be thinking at this point.
I think that's a great idea. Go for it, Aileen.
I'm also looking at Stephanie's comment and wondering, what is the time frame? This is the question we had last time, was about the new primary care steering committee. And what is the time frame of that? Because we do need to sort of maybe not coordinate the content, but we do need to coordinate what's going on elsewhere and have that connect and work together. Do we even know what the timing is?
Let me look at my cheat sheet here. Stephanie might know off the top of her head. I know John Soroyan just reached out to me today to for us. I think the Green Mountain Care Board.
So they need to have their
And
first
someone-
committee meeting by September 1st.
Okay.
So they're gonna start meeting quickly, and knowing John Soroyan, he's a taskmaster, and they'll get right to work over the fall.
Yeah.
I just don't want, my fear would be for this group to kind of keep pushing the things that Green Mountain Care Board can't necessarily change and run up against the same frustration. And so if there's another group that has authority to do that, I would switch the priority to that group instead of this group working on it. But you guys do, obviously you have to decide what you want to do. I just don't, I hear the intense frustration about not getting to move action items forward. And I want to make sure this group stays focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, it's therapeutic to all come together and have a chance to talk about things, but I think we've surpassed the therapeutic benefit. And
And that I think that work group, and I can drop my summary notes in there too on section 9A of 126. That group does take input about workforce and, the things that actually other agencies have more direct impact on than the Green Mountain Care Board. So I think that coordination will be important. So, well, I'm hearing a charter work group, legal levers work group. Is that what we'd call that, Dave? Legal. Thank you.
I would say I feel like it's care board authorities, GMCB authorities.
Yep.
I don't know, trying to primary care GMCB alignment work group or something like that. How do we get with the
GMCB authority alignment?
There you go. How's that? The GMCB AAWG.
So
There's
we
like
can.
There's like a bog. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we might need to put it in an email. We don't have all the members here tonight, unless, I don't know how you want to handle this, Dave, whether we follow it up and Abby followed up with an email and team and like others, PCAG members.
I'd like to, I mean, I think it'd be nice if other people who weren't able to join tonight have the opportunity to say, hey, I really want to work extra over the summer and try to figure this out. So that's, I think they should have the chance to volunteer to do that. The other area that I think, and maybe to Stephanie's comment, we should see what comes out of this other primary care steering committee, but is a leadership work group, like what's the structure of the
Yes.
structure of the PCAG? We've been talking about, should we have like a chair, or should, is there, I don't know if that's worthy of a work group, but like but
That's
maybe,
yeah, that's like charter, I think.
I guess
but-
that, that could be part of the charter if people
Yeah.
feel comfortable with that. And maybe, I think maybe September, October, when we kind of know with more clarity what we can do with what we want to do and what you want to affect change best lands, then maybe we may find that we might find through our charter group that we need a different structure or some sort of thing. I don't know. Maybe there's a lot to discover there. So
We'll put this in an email and send it out, and then we'll have to figure out quorum stuff. Like we'll have to have a set amount on each group so that we're not having illegal meetings. But we can do that. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thanks, Dave. That was really helpful. Okay. My notes here. So Dave kind of covered this, but I'll just reiterate it. And I talked about it earlier too. We're about to hit our very, very busy part of our regulatory work over the summer. And we would request that we take a break for July and August, maybe September, and come back in October, but we can have these work groups going and we can make sure we're checking in with folks and see if you need any assistance. How does that sound? And I want to talk to the legal team too, because there is a way we may have to compile some information and just send it out to you, but we don't want to go against open meeting law in our communications. And you just have to be careful with emails flying and everything. So I'll work on that and get back to you on it. The other piece that I do need to address is that representative from this group to the steering committee. So, Stephanie, do you remember if it says that we choose a person, or does it seems?
It's up
Seems
to the
like
Green
this
Mountain Pier
committee-
Board
Oh, really? Okay.
to nominate a PCAG member.
Okay. So I'll put out a call in an email as well for folks who would be interested. How's that? And I'll get some, I'll reach back out to John and see, like Stephanie's right. He's a taskmaster. He'll get right on this. So, and is this the really big group or is that the advisory? I think the advisory is the really big one. This is a more manageable size.
Yes, this one is very intentionally built.
Excellent. Okay. If you have any questions about accessing any of our hearings or any of our information on our website, just reach out to Abby. She can help you. We will work to send reminders about the dates. We'll get that together for you as well. First, it's rate review in July, and then we'll have the hospital hearings in August, and then the votes in September. I can see face and she's thinking. Go ahead, Faye.
Yeah, steam coming out my ears. No, I just wanted to make sure, I just wanted clarity on, so will Abby send out something saying these are the steering committees we talked about and who is interested in being on those? And then
work groups, yes.
Yeah, I'm using the words wrong. Sorry, I got my words all mixed up. I meant the working groups. People will just kind of volunteer for those, I presume. I don't know if, if it happened that there were dozens, everyone on the board wanted to be on one work group, I guess that we'd have to talk about that, but I think it's unlikely. And then you'll put out something seeing who is interested in the steering committee. So they're sort of separate.
Yes.
Separate things that
very
people will
separate.
have to decide if
Yeah.
they want to volunteer for. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's one person for the steering committee. So, but like I said, let me find out, like I can summarize in the email, the commitment, so you'll all know. And I think that's all we had on our agenda. Let me get it. The leadership structure survey, I think that goes into the charter and the work group. Are there any items from PCAG you want to bring up? Faye, is that a legacy hand or is that a new hand? Go ahead, Eileen.
I'm just wondering, since we have time, and since I'm hearing from Faye wanting some clarity, could we just run back through what are the work groups, the topics that are going out for the work groups?
Sure.
Just to get a little clarity on that. I know it's supposed to come out in an email, but that might be helpful if
That'd
we
be
just
great.
ran through that since we have time.
Yeah, thank you. I have, and then you all can keep me honest here. So a charter work group, that's one. And that includes like leadership structure for this group and things like that. And then I have I'll just put all these words out. The work group looking at GMCB authorities and their alignment, or maybe it's the other way around with primary care. Is that, Dave, you got to help me? Is it flipped?
Oh, I don't know.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
I think
work group
all
to
of it
figure
was
out
supposed to
how we
kind of
could-
align.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to know, we want the lawyers to be able to work with this work group and detail to the work group. Okay, these are the authorities the Green Mountain Care Board has, and alignment with the primary care priorities. That's what it is. The primary care group, advisory group priorities.
Which is a really long name.
Yep. Maybe we can just call it alignment of priorities work group, alignment of priorities and statutory. Stephanie's looking like, Stephanie's like, Stephanie, the face.
PCAG law. I don't know.
You gotta get somebody who devises the names for all the cardiac studies that always spell some word,
That's
really
right.
forced acronyms.
Oh
That's
yeah,
right.
well we've done this before. What do you want it to be? Maple creamy? We can figure it out. You can come up with something that.
That was the second one. There was a third one. Maybe not. Maybe the structure goes under the charter, so there's just two.
Yeah.
And then separately will be the request for the whoever's interested in representing this group on the steering committee per S126. Lee, go ahead.
So Dave, is it too early for a reference pricing group? I mean, you don't know enough yet.
Well, no, I don't. Why don't we work through the legal authorities? Because I think I don't know our statute as well as they do. It's pretty expansive and has lots of little different morsels in different places. But to me, the one that's probably most interesting is the rate setting authority that I can see being sort of like a big substantive impact. And it has probably impacts in other areas too. You know, one could see this impacting workforce or other things too. So,
Yeah, to me, that sounds like the strongest lever that we've ever talked about, but we have to obviously get it figured out by what the actual legal
yeah,
language is about it. And but you know, that and combine it with John King's capitation thing to get primary care out of the coding business would be big things in my mind. But I think that does fall into the legal thing. Maybe the rate thing.
you know, Lee, it may be that we have a meeting in a couple weeks with the lawyers, and what we find is really this is a reference-based pricing work group, and maybe we could just email
Agreed.
that,
Right.
in a communication from Susan or something like that.
And
that
yeah, and I'm just looking at the section 9A from S126 that talks about the steering committee, primary care steering committee, and number 8 says consult with the Green Mountain Care Board. This is for the one John Soroyan blueprint is running. Consult with the Green Mountain Care Board in the event that the board develops reference-based pricing for primary care providers under.
oh,
So
that's in
but
S126.
Yeah, that is a duty in the primary care steering committee. So
Okay.
that's over there.
Okay.
So, and I thought I saw somewhere else, I mean, we certainly will. I thought I saw it in our establishing reference-based pricing to consult with primary care. Maybe that was it. Okay, but we'll certainly consult with you on this.
But I would say on that basis that, you know, we could still have our own little work group for people to generate ideas, and then that one person takes them to the steering committee.
Yeah.
Because the more ideas, the better, because, you know, that one person may not have the best idea. And I'd like the best ideas to get through.
I did want to mention back to our regulatory activities this summer, something that I just want to share it kind of a Susan Barrett view of what the board does with, especially around hospital budgets and even rate review too. And Dave can chime in if he wants to, but I don't want to put him on the spot because he's the one who's making all these decisions. But not to comment on any specific case before us, but in general, I've heard the board recently look at, especially around hospital budgets, like there's a finite bucket of money, and like the board needs to look at, where is this money going to? And I think this ties into the work that we may be doing, what we're pursuing in reference-based pricing, some of the comments Dave made about having more levers of where that money goes. And I think that's just something for you all to think about as you're looking at our regulatory work and to support the Green Mountain Care Board. These are really hard decisions, made even more difficult by just an incredibly difficult climate right now with the solvency of Blue Cross Blue Shield at stake, many of the hospitals struggling. It's just really challenging. So I don't envy Dave and his colleagues on the board.
I just add two comments, and that is the additional one is the looming Medicaid cuts, and then
That's right. Yeah.
and then with regards to hospital budgets, I mean we have to evaluate each hospital budget on the merits of that budget.
Oh.
But implicit in the system is that if we set the insurance rates first and then we do hospital budgets, and say hospital budgets are higher than the insurance rates projected, then there's less money for everything else. And I think if you look back over time, there's been an attempt to constrain insurance rate growth, but we get to hospital budget season, we allocate more money to hospitals, and then they go over budget and spend more money in hospitals, then there's less money for the rest of the system. And much of primary care is outside of that system. So I think I think what Susan's trying to describe is the sort of, there is a, well, it probably doesn't seem like it if you were to sit there and listen through the hospital budget hearings, and that would be pretty tedious of an effort. And maybe Stephanie does a bunch of them, but it's they do have a cumulative impact on the rest of the system in that way I described. So
Thanks, Dave. I don't envy you and what's before you. It's tough stuff.
Hasn't come yet, so
I know. Well,
I am just in a delusional
Yeah.
state that it's all going to
That's
be
right.
just fine. So
oh yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, we have follow-ups with the charter groups, with the steering committee for Act 1626. Anything else?
I'll send out a follow-up email with all of this written down as well.
Okay, that's super helpful, Abby. Oh, Lee.
I'm just wondering, do we, I know we discussed this last meeting. Do we have any more clarity on this $11 million from
Oh.
DC?
Stephanie might want to weigh in there. There was language in the budget, right? Or did that fall out?
No, that went away.
Okay.
And it wasn't really language. I don't know what they thought it intended to do, but it wasn't, I don't think, what they thought it would do. Anyway, plus I don't know how you put legislative language in a sort of private settlement that's not in the state of Vermont legislative arena. But given that, nobody wants this money. I mean, everybody wants the money, but nobody wants to take the money and then spend it out. UVM Health Network and the medical center is somewhat bound by lots of different laws where they can't actually pay other health practitioners. AHS doesn't want to take it. They say they can't, but I think there are some avenues which they've taken this kind of money and done similar things. And some of the money is actually going to AHS. It is a large amount of money. I will say the Medical Society has, we didn't ask for it, but lots of people said, oh, the Medical Society should take it. And then we started getting calls about how we're going to spend the money. But we are doing a deep analysis of that because we are a nonprofit, both a 501c3 and a C6. We have a foundation and our main organization, but there are tax implications. There are things that bring you up to the IRS. There are lots of different levers that $11 million brings to you when your budget doesn't normally include hardly any of that money. So we've enlisted a tax lawyer, a health lawyer, and our accountant who are doing a pretty in-depth review of whether it's even feasible for us to take the money. We want to help primary care and our members, but it is complicated. And so that's where it is right now.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Sure.
Dave or Abby, do you have anything? Dave's
I know
gonna say.
I want to try. No, I just want to try to figure out a better note to end on than that. That just sounds like a quagmire.
Yeah, it is a bit of a quagmire.
Let's volunteer PCAG to be the ones who decide how it's dispersed.
I love it. All those.
I
I think there's lots of
bet-
ways to decide. Yeah.
I bet we'd do a pretty good job.
And we could have some great meetings in the Bahamas for the work groups.
Kidding, joke.
Yes, I'm kidding.
And thank you, Abby, for keeping us all straight here. Abby's doing a
Oh,
great
I'll do
job
my best. Thanks.
supporting us. Brand new, sort of new, 6 months into the job.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Please reach out if you have any other questions. And thank you all. Thank you, Dave, too, for coming tonight with a cold.
Thanks, everybody. Good
Be
meeting.
in touch. Yeah, great meeting.
Thank you all.
You all soon.
Night.